Hey, step away from the vehicle. This lot's restricted.
I work here, just loading my gear.
Everyone says that. I'm gonna need ID before this gets ugly.
For putting bags in my own car?
Sir, you don't drive unmarked police SUVs. Don't play dumb.
Julian Moss, Chief of Police.
You're Chief Moss?
And you just racially profiled your...
The parking lot security camera captured everything. Every word, every movement, every assumption Officer Brent Connors should have questioned, but didn't. The black man standing beside the unmarked SUV isn't panicking. He isn't sneaking around. He isn't even glancing over his shoulder. He's simply loading gear into the back of a department-issued vehicle parked exactly where it's supposed to be, inside the police personnel-only lot. But Officer Connors never saw a police chief. He saw a black man touching a high-end SUV, and he made a decision. He strides into frame with his chest puffed forward, hand already resting on his duty belt, acting like the parking lot belongs to him alone. No hesitation, no verification, no professional distance, just certainty, dangerous, arrogant certainty. And when the man calmly lifts his credentials toward him, credentials that should have ended the entire encounter instantly, Officer Connors laughs, mocks him, calls the ID fake, calls the vehicle impounded, calls the chief of police someone who doesn't belong here. What happens next didn't just end an officer's career, it triggered a $1.2 million settlement, exposed a pattern of racial profiling inside the department, and forced the city to answer for why a tow detail officer felt empowered to detain the chief of police on his own property. But what made this rookie believe he could illegally tow a chief's unmarked SUV? And how did his own body cam become the evidence that destroyed him? Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be heard. Your support brings more truth to light.
Detroit, Michigan, the Central District Police Headquarters Parking Facility, Level 1, Sectional C, a restricted access lot reserved exclusively for command staff, detectives, and authorized department vehicles. Entry requires key card access. Signage posted every 30 feet, police personnel only, unauthorized vehicles subject to tow. It was 2:15 p.m. on a Tuesday in October. The lot was moderately occupied, patrol vehicles, unmarked sedans, personal cars belonging to officers working afternoon shift. Security cameras mounted on light poles captured fixed angles of the entire space, recording continuously to servers maintained by Internal Affairs. Chief Julian Moss had been appointed Chief of Police for Detroit's Central District exactly 3 weeks earlier. At 48 years old, he was a 26-year veteran of law enforcement who'd risen through patrol, detective bureau, and command positions to reach the department's third highest ranking. His appointment had been celebrated by community leaders and civil rights organizations. A black chief in a district with significant African-American population was seen as long overdue representation. That afternoon, Moss was loading tactical equipment into his department-issued SUV, a black Chevrolet Tahoe with concealed emergency lights, government plates, and Central District Command insignia on the registration. He'd spent the morning in administrative meetings and was preparing for evening community outreach. His trunk was open, his suit jacket hung on the door handle, his shirt sleeves rolled up as he organized a duffel bag containing duty gear, binders with policy documents, and a tactical vest required for high-risk call responses. His movements were unhurried, routine, unremarkable. He wasn't concealing anything, wasn't acting furtively, wasn't doing anything that would draw attention from anyone, operating with basic observational skills and professional judgment. But Officer Brent Connors wasn't operating with either. Connors was 27 years old, 2 years with Detroit PD, currently assigned to parking enforcement and tow coordination, a position typically reserved for officers who demonstrated poor field performance or required supervised duty while under performance review. His personnel file contained 4 complaints in 2 years, all involving confrontational encounters during parking enforcement. Supervisors had noted Officer Connors demonstrates aggressive approach to minor violations, needs improvement in professional demeanor and conflict de-escalation. Those deficiencies were about to destroy his career. Connors pulled his tow detail patrol truck into the restricted lot he had access for enforcement purposes and immediately spotted Moss at the SUV. The security footage shows Connors' body language from the moment he exited his vehicle: chest forward, shoulders squared, stride purposeful and aggressive. No pause to assess, no verification of whether this person might be authorized, just immediate assumption of wrongdoing. The footage captured Connors' approach and his first words, delivered with hostile authority. "Step away from the vehicle. This is a restricted lot." Moss looked up, his expression showing mild surprise, but no alarm. He was accustomed to being recognized. Most officers knew the command staff by sight, especially newly appointed chiefs. "Officer, I work here. I'm loading my gear." Connors stepped closer, his hand moving to his belt. "I don't know you, and you don't look like you work here." The racial coding in that statement was unmistakable. "Don't look like" was profiling disguised as security protocol. Moss's expression shifted slightly, recognition that this wasn't routine verification, but something else. "I'm Chief Moss, Central District Command. This is my assigned vehicle." Connors laughed, actually laughed, the sound captured clearly on the security audio. "Sure you are. Your kind don't drive unmarked police SUVs." The mask had dropped completely. Your kind wasn't ambiguous. It was explicit racial bias from an officer who decided that a black man loading an SUV in a police lot couldn't possibly belong there.
Moss maintained his composure, the result of decades navigating law enforcement while black, understanding that responding with justified anger would only be weaponized against him. His voice remained measured, professional. "Officer, I'm going to show you my credentials. I suggest you look at them carefully before this goes any further." Connors' hand moved toward his service weapon. "Don't reach for anything. I need to see ID before this gets ugly." "My identification is in my jacket pocket on the door. I'm telling you, I'm Chief Julian Moss, and you're creating a situation you don't want." "Everyone says they work here." Connor's voice dripped with contempt. "You people are always claiming connections." Moss reached slowly for his jacket, moving with deliberate care to avoid any action Connors could misinterpret. He pulled his credential wallet from the interior pocket and held it open at eye level, 2 feet from Connors' face. The security footage captured the credentials clearly. Gold Chief's badge, official ID card with Moss's photo, name, rank, and department seal. Julian Moss, Chief of Police, Central District Command, Uniform Division. Connors squinted theatrically, his voice mocking. "Those look fake. You can buy badges online. Anyone can print an ID card." Moss's jaw tightened, the first visible sign of his patience eroding. "Officer, these are official department credentials. My badge number is registered with the Commissioner's office. The SUV's plate is department issued. You can verify all of this with one radio call." "I don't need to verify anything. I can see what I'm seeing. You loading a high-end vehicle in a restricted lot with fake credentials." The security footage shows Moss taking a controlled breath, clearly calculating his next move. He could order Connors to stand down. He technically outranked every officer in the district, but doing so would likely trigger defensive escalation. So he tried reason instead. "Officer, I'm asking you professionally. Call your supervisor. Call dispatch. Call anyone who can verify my identity. This doesn't need to become an incident." Connors pulled his radio. "Dispatch, this is Tow Unit 7. I've got an unauthorized civilian in the personnel-only lot, Section C.
Subject claims to be command staff, but credentials appear fraudulent, requesting verification and tow authorization for Black Tahoe government plates. The dispatcher's response came through clearly. Unit 7, can you provide plate number for verification? Connors read the plate number. There was a pause, longer than typical. Then the dispatcher returned. Unit 7, that vehicle is registered to Central District Command. Can you confirm the individual's name? Subject claims to be Chief Moss. Another pause. The security footage shows Moss's expression, not satisfaction, but weary recognition that even dispatch confirmation might not penetrate Connors' certainty. Unit 7, Chief Moss was appointed 3 weeks ago. If the individual has matching credentials, that vehicle is his assigned unit. Connors' face showed no recognition of error, just defensive anger. Dispatch, credentials appear counterfeit. I'm maintaining my position. Moss's voice carried edge now. Officer, you just received confirmation. Release my vehicle and step back. If the officer had just radioed the watch commander, do you think this stop would have ended right here?
Connors activated his Bodycam, late, after the encounter had already escalated, but finally creating secondary video documentation. The footage shows tight framing, Moss's face showing controlled irritation, the credentials still held visibly, the SUV's open trunk with clearly organized gear. I'm calling a tow for this vehicle. Connors' voice had risen, defensive and aggressive. You can sort this out with detectives. A second officer approached, Officer Tyrell Gibson, another tow detail employee who'd been working the adjacent lot. He'd heard the radio traffic and walked over to assess. His expression changed the moment he saw Moss. Sir? Chief Moss? Moss nodded once, his voice tight. Yes. Gibson's eyes widened, his head swiveling toward Connors with obvious alarm. Connors, did you verify his ID? Connors gestured dismissively. It's fake, obviously fake. Gibson stared at him like he'd announced he could fly. That's not fake, that's the actual chief, the new district commander. The Bodycam captured Connors' face perfectly. The moment realization began penetrating his certainty. But instead of immediate apology and retreat, ego forced him to justify. How was I supposed to know? He doesn't... Gibson cut him off sharply. You were supposed to verify. You were supposed to call it improperly. You were supposed to not assume. Moss spoke, his voice carrying command authority for the first time. Officer Connors, you racially profiled me. You attempted to tow my department-issued vehicle from a lot I'm authorized to use. You ignored my credentials. You dismissed dispatcher confirmation. And you did all of this based on assumption rooted in racial bias. Sir, I was just... Stop. Moss's voice was absolute. Don't speak to me further. Officer Gibson, secure this scene. I want his body cam footage preserved. I want the security footage from this lot secured. And I want his supervisor here immediately. Gibson pulled his radio, his voice professional but urgent. Dispatch, need immediate supervisor response to personnel lot Section C. Chief Moss requests watch commander presence for incident documentation. Connors stood frozen, the Bodycam capturing his face cycling through emotions, denial, fear, desperate calculation about how to minimize what had just happened. But there was no minimizing it. Every second was documented, every word preserved, every assumption exposed. What do you think went through the rookie's mind when he realized the man he was mocking was his new commander?
Within 8 minutes, the personnel-only lot had transformed into administrative crime scene. Watch Commander Lieutenant Sandra Fleming arrived, assessed the situation with grim professionalism, and immediately separated the involved parties. Connors was directed to return to his patrol truck and wait. Moss was asked to provide statement. The Bodycam footage, Connors and Gibson's was immediately preserved. Security footage from 3 camera angles was pulled and locked under internal affairs protocols. Fleming called her captain, who called the deputy chief, who called the police commissioner. Within 30 minutes, every supervisor in the chain of command understood they were facing catastrophic liability. Because this wasn't routine misconduct, this was an officer racially profiling the chief of police on department property. Connors sat in his patrol truck, Bodycam still recording his face. The footage shows him attempting to craft justifications, practicing phrases, rehearsing explanations, trying to build narrative that didn't involve admitting racist assumption. But every angle of video evidence contradicted whatever story he might tell. Inside headquarters, Moss provided detailed statement to internal affairs investigators. At approximately 2:15 p.m., I was loading equipment into my assigned vehicle when Officer Connors approached aggressively. He immediately questioned my presence, despite this being a restricted lot I'm authorized to access. When I identified myself and showed credentials, he called them fake. When dispatcher confirmed vehicle registration, he dismissed it. Throughout the encounter, he made statements indicating racial bias, including, "Your kind don't drive unmarked police SUVs," and "You people are always claiming connections." His conduct violated department policy on profiling, failed to verify credentials despite clear identification, ignoring dispatcher confirmation of vehicle registration, threatening to tow a command staff vehicle without authorization, disrespect towards superior officer, and creating department liability through bias-motivated action. Connors was placed on immediate administrative leave. His badge and service weapon were confiscated, his access to department facilities was revoked, and Internal Affairs recommended termination with cause. But the consequences extended beyond individual accountability, because if an officer felt empowered to profile and threaten the chief of police, what was happening to ordinary citizens who lacked badges, rank, and institutional power? If an officer can profile the chief of police, what chance do regular citizens have?
The termination hearing was held 3 weeks after the incident. Connors appeared with union representation, but the evidence was indefensible. Video from 3 angles showing every moment. Audio capturing every word. Dispatch recordings proving he'd ignored confirmation. And Moss's testimony, measured, factual, devastating. The termination decision was unanimous. Officer Brent Connors was fired from Detroit Police Department effective immediately. His law enforcement certification was permanently revoked. His name entered national decertification databases. But Moss wasn't satisfied with individual punishment. Because Connors' behavior reflected systemic problems, training failures, cultural tolerance of bias, and lack of accountability that had allowed him to reach 2 years of service despite 4 prior complaints, Moss filed personal civil rights lawsuit, citing racial discrimination, violation of his civil rights as both citizen and law enforcement official, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and department negligence in supervising an officer with documented bias issues. The city's legal team evaluated the case and faced uncomfortable reality. Defending this would require arguing that profiling the chief of police was reasonable. No jury would accept that. No judge would find it defensible. Settlement negotiations began immediately. The city's initial offer, $400,000 plus policy reforms, was rejected. Moss demanded accountability that went beyond money. The final settlement? $1.2 million paid to Chief Julian Moss for civil rights violations and emotional distress. Permanent prohibition on Brent Connors from any law enforcement employment in Michigan. Implementation of mandatory verification protocols requiring ID checks before enforcement action regardless of appearance assumptions.
enhanced anti-profiling training for all parking enforcement officers, quarterly audits of tow detail encounters to identify pattern bias, creation of independent review panel to investigate profiling complaints, public acknowledgement from mayor and commissioner of systemic failure. The settlement press conference was held at police headquarters.
Moss stood at the podium in full uniform and delivered a statement that transcended personal grievance. Officer Connors saw me loading my vehicle and made immediate assumptions based on my race. He didn't see a chief, he didn't see a colleague, he saw a black man he assumed didn't belong. When I showed credentials, he called them fake. When dispatch confirmed registration, he ignored it. Why? Because his bias was stronger than evidence. If he treated me this way, someone with rank, authority, institutional protection, imagine how he treats people with no badge, no title, no power. This settlement acknowledges my harm, but real justice requires asking why an officer felt empowered to profile his own chief, and what that reveals about how the department treats ordinary black citizens every day. The $1.2 million made headlines. The termination delivered individual accountability. The reforms provided structural response. But the deeper question remained. How many other officers operated with Connor's assumptions? How many citizens had been profiled without video evidence? How many complaints had been dismissed because victims lacked Moss's position and resources? Moss continued serving as chief of police, his authority reinforced rather than diminished by his willingness to demand accountability. He implemented sweeping reforms in Central District, including bias training, community oversight, and transparent complaint processes. Connors disappeared from public view. His law enforcement career ended at 27, his name forever associated with profiling his own chief over an SUV he was legally authorized to use. The security camera that captured everything became permanent record. Documentation that even chiefs aren't immune to racial profiling, and evidence that accountability, though rare, is possible when victims have power to demand it. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light.
Ma'am, step away from the trunk for me.
Excuse me? What's the problem?
We got a call about someone stealing an evidence box from a vehicle out here, and you're standing right over it.
That's not stolen. That's my case file.
Ma'am, you're not going to talk your way around this. Hands behind your back.
Officer, look at me. I'm a federal agent. I have credentials right here. Just let me
Yeah,
grab
blah, blah. You can explain all that.
The parking lot security camera captures everything, every angle, every second, every decision that Officer Daniel Burrows will spend the rest of his life trying to explain. He walks toward a black woman standing at the trunk of her own SUV, unaware that the box of stolen evidence he thinks he's bravely recovering is actually part of a federal case file she's been working for 6 months. He doesn't know who she is, he doesn't know where she works, and he definitely doesn't know that the woman he's seconds away from handcuffing has clearance levels that outrank everyone in his entire department. She isn't yelling, she isn't resisting, she isn't even moving aggressively. She's Special Agent Dana R. Miles, an 11-year veteran of the FBI's Organized Crime Task Force. And in the next 8 minutes, this rookie's arrogance is about to destroy an undercover operation, cost the city over $1 million, and end his career. But why did this rookie think he could arrest a woman in her own driveway over a box he didn't even understand? And how did the security camera become the evidence that obliterated his case? Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be heard. Your support brings more truth to light.
Portland, Oregon, Hawthorne Heights Apartments, a mid-rise residential complex where professionals, young families, and long-term residents coexist in unremarkable urban harmony. The parking garage on level 2, section B. Concrete pillars, fluorescent lighting, security cameras mounted every 50 feet. It was 4:32 p.m. on a Thursday in September. Special Agent Dana Miles had just returned from the FBI Portland field office carrying classified case materials that required secure home storage overnight. She was 38 years old, 11 years with the Bureau, currently embedded in a joint task force investigating an interstate organized crime syndicate involved in money laundering, human trafficking, and racketeering. The case had consumed 6 months of her life: surveillance, wiretaps, confidential informants, financial analysis. She was days away from presenting evidence to a federal grand jury that would authorize arrest warrants for 17 suspects across 4 states. That afternoon, she'd loaded 2 evidence boxes into her Bureau-issued SUV, a black Ford Explorer with government plates and FBI parking credentials displayed on the dashboard. Standard protocol for agents working sensitive cases requiring after-hours review. She was standing at her open trunk, organizing files, when she heard footsteps approaching rapidly from behind. Officer Daniel Burrows was 24 years old, 6 months with Portland Police, recently assigned to patrol duty covering the Hawthorne district. His training evaluations had noted concerns: demonstrates overconfidence in threat assessment, needs improvement in verification procedures before escalation. Those concerns were about to manifest catastrophically. Burrows had received a call 30 minutes earlier. Apartment management reported seeing someone loading boxes that looked like they might contain stolen property into a vehicle. The description was vague: black female, dark clothing, SUV in the garage. Burrows responded with assumptions already formed. He saw Dana, a black woman with boxes, and made immediate connections: theft, evidence removal, suspicious activity. The security camera footage captured his approach: fast stride, aggressive posture, hand hovering near his service weapon. No observational pause, no attempt to assess context, just immediate confrontation. "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle. Keep your hands where I can see them." Dana turned, confusion evident on her face. Her voice carried professional calm. "Officer, can I help you with something?" "Those boxes, where did you get them?" "From my office. I'm loading my work materials into my car." Burrows stepped closer, his voice rising. "We received a report about stolen property. I need you to step back while I inspect those boxes." Dana's expression shifted from confusion to controlled irritation. "Officer, this is my vehicle. These are my work files. You don't have probable cause to search anything." The security footage shows Burrows' face harden. Being challenged, especially by a black woman, triggered defensive escalation. "Ma'am, refusing to cooperate makes you look guilty. Step away from the vehicle now." "I'm not refusing anything. I'm explaining that you're making assumptions without evidence. These boxes have federal seals. Look closely before you escalate this situation." Burrows glanced at the boxes briefly, but didn't process what he was seeing. His mind had already categorized Dana as suspicious, and information contradicting that narrative wasn't registering. How would you have reacted if an officer accused you of stealing something from your own car?
Dana reached slowly toward her jacket pocket. "Officer, I'm going to show you my credentials. I'm a federal agent. These are classified case materials." Burrows' hand shot to his weapon. "Don't reach for anything. Hands up." "My identification is in my front pocket. You can retrieve it yourself if you're concerned about—" "Hands up. Last warning." Dana raised her hands, her voice remaining controlled despite obvious frustration. "You're making a serious mistake. I am Special Agent Dana Miles, FBI, Portland Field Office. My credentials are in my left jacket pocket. You can verify. Burroughs activated his body cam with his free hand. The footage shows him stepping aggressively into Dana's personal space. Save the story for booking. I don't know what's in those boxes, but you're not leaving until I find out. Those boxes contain classified federal case materials with evidence seals. Tampering with them is a federal offense. I'm instructing you to verify my identity before you create an interstate incident. The body cam captured Burroughs' expression, ego and authority challenged, doubling down rather than pausing to verify. You can explain everything to detectives. Turn around. Hands behind your back. Officer, I am not turning around. I am not placing my hands anywhere until you verify who I am. Look at my credentials. Look at the federal seals on those boxes. Look at the government plates on this vehicle. Use basic observation before you violate federal law. But Burroughs had passed the point where evidence mattered. In his worldview, compliance was paramount, and resistance, even reasonable assertion of rights, justified escalation. He grabbed Dana's wrist. You're under arrest for theft and obstruction. Dana pulled her arm back instinctively, not violently, just natural resistance to unexpected physical contact. That movement gave Burroughs exactly what he needed. Stop resisting. The body cam shows clearly Dana wasn't resisting arrest. She was trying to prevent assault. But Burroughs had created his narrative and was committed to it. Do you think he actually believed she was stealing? Or was he looking for a reason to escalate? Burroughs twisted Dana's arm behind her back with excessive force. The body cam captured her sharp intake of breath, pain, not from guilt, but from unnecessary violence. My credentials are in my left front pocket. She kept her voice controlled despite the pain. Reach in and pull them out. Verify my identity. Burroughs ignored her, applying handcuffs while reciting Miranda rights. You have the right to remain silent. The second patrol car arrived, Officer Nicole Strand responding to Burroughs' backup request. She stepped out and immediately assessed the scene. A well-dressed black woman handcuffed against a government vehicle. Federal evidence seals visible on boxes in the trunk. Burroughs, what's the situation? Subject was loading suspected stolen property. She claims it's work files but refused to cooperate with inspection. Strand walked closer to the trunk, examining the boxes. These have federal evidence seals. Did you verify her employment? She claims she's FBI, obviously lying. Strand's expression shifted. Did you check her identification? She refused to provide it. Dana's voice cut through, cold and precise. I didn't refuse. I told him repeatedly my credentials are in my left jacket pocket. He refused to look. Strand reached toward Dana's pocket. Burroughs stepped forward. Don't contaminate the scene. Burroughs, if she's actually FBI and you just arrested her for doing her job, this is a federal incident. We need to verify immediately. She's playing you. These people always claim connections. Strand pulled Dana's credential wallet from her pocket, flipped it open, and her face went pale. FBI badge, federal ID card, Special Agent Dana R. Miles, Organized Crime Task Force. The body cam captured the moment both officers realized catastrophic error. Strand turned to Burroughs, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. You just arrested a federal agent loading classified case files into her bureau vehicle. What's the worst part of this arrest for you? The profiling? The arrogance? The refusal to check ID? Sergeant Franklin Oakes arrived within 4 minutes, a 21-year veteran who'd worked joint operations with FBI and recognized the severity immediately. He approached Dana, still handcuffed against her vehicle. Ma'am, I'm Sergeant Oakes. Can you state your name and position? Dana's voice remained controlled but carried steel beneath. Special Agent Dana Miles, FBI Portland Field Office, Organized Crime Task Force. Badge number 7842. I've been illegally detained while loading classified case materials. These officers refuse to verify my credentials despite multiple requests. I want these handcuffs removed immediately, and I want incident reports filed on both officers. Oakes turned to Burroughs. Give me her credentials. Burroughs hesitated. Sarge, she was acting suspicious. Now. Oakes examined Dana's identification, then pulled out his phone and dialed FBI Portland's duty officer. The conversation was brief and confirmed Dana's identity, active status, and current assignment to sensitive operations requiring case material transport. He disconnected and addressed Dana with professional deference. Agent Miles, I'm removing the handcuffs immediately. This was a severe failure in assessment and verification. I have your full cooperation for whatever action you choose to pursue. The handcuffs came off. Dana rubbed her wrists, red marks already forming. Sergeant, I need you to secure this scene. These case materials have been compromised by your officer's interference. I'm contacting my SAC immediately. This incident just destroyed 6 months of undercover work because now everyone in this complex witnessed FBI presence at my vehicle. She pulled her phone and dialed. The conversation was brief, professional, and devastating in its implications. When she disconnected, her expression was cold. My special agent in charge is en route. You're to preserve all Bodycam and security footage. No reports get filed until FBI reviews this incident. And Officer Burroughs, your career just ended. Detaining a federal agent during active investigation creates interstate liability your department can't afford. What do you think she was feeling in that moment? Anger, embarrassment, or pure disbelief? The settlement was announced 3 months after the incident. $1 million paid to Special Agent Dana Miles for civil rights violations, emotional distress, and professional harm. Immediate termination of Officer Daniel Burroughs with permanent post-certification revocation. 6-month suspension for Officer Nicole Strand for failure to independently verify credentials. Mandatory retraining for entire Portland Police on federal agent identification and jurisdiction protocols. Implementation of verification requirements before any detention of individuals claiming federal employment. Public apology from police chief and mayor acknowledging the violation. FBI cooperation with Portland PD suspended pending compliance with new protocols. Officer Burroughs was 24 years old, 6 months into his career, permanently barred from law enforcement nationwide. His name entered decertification databases, ensuring he could never wear a badge again. Special Agent Miles was reassigned to FBI's Seattle field office, where her identity wasn't compromised. She received commendation from the director for her professionalism under circumstances that would have justified far stronger response. The organized crime syndicate she'd been investigating eventually faced prosecution through different channels, but the operational delays cost federal prosecutors leverage they'd spent months building. Portland implemented comprehensive reforms, including mandatory training on recognizing federal credentials, protocols requiring supervisor consultation before detaining anyone claiming law enforcement status, and quarterly audits of detention decisions to identify pattern bias. But the broader lesson resonated beyond Portland. If a credentialed FBI agent loading classified materials into a government vehicle could be detained and handcuffed because a rookie cop saw a black woman and assumed criminality, what happened to ordinary black citizens whose credentials carried no federal weight, whose vehicles displayed no government plates, whose work required no security clearances? Dana's $1 million settlement delivered individual justice. The reforms provided structural accountability. But the incident remained evidence that training, policy, and oversight could only partially address the implicit bias that turned lawful activity into suspected crime when performed by black people. The security camera footage that captured everything, every angle, every second, every decision, became training material in police academies nationwide, teaching future officers what catastrophic career destruction looks like when ego overrides evidence. Officer Burroughs made assumptions.
Special Agent Miles paid the professional price, and Portland taxpayers paid $1 million for one rookie's refusal to verify before he escalated. Before we close, where are you watching from? If you learned something from this story, hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps bring more truth to light.
Sir, what's going on?
We got a report about someone growing illegal plants out here. You match who we're looking for.
Match? You gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, black male, middle age. That's what we got.
That's not a description. That's just you profiling.
Sir, don't make this harder or you'll be detained.
I'm a federal judge and I know the law more than you.
The body cam jumps to life in a burst of harsh midday glare. No intro, no warning, just confrontation on impact. A black man in gardening gloves rises slowly from his flower bed, framed close and upward by the officer's body cam. His expression puzzled, then tightening. But the rookie officer steps forward like he's cornering a suspect, not addressing a homeowner. You can feel the moment he decides this man doesn't belong on the very lawn he's tending. Quick flashes, orchids swaying behind him, the officer's clipped tone, tension spreading through the quiet yard. Then the man lifts something the rookie never expected to see. A judicial ID, gold-sealed, impossible to misread. But instead of backing off, the rookie escalates, challenging his right to be here, his identity, his authority. The camera captures the exact instant confusion turns to anger and patience turns into consequences that will cost the city $15 million. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be heard. Your support brings more truth to light. But how did a rookie officer get so reckless that he tried to detain the chief presiding judge on his own property?
Charleston, South Carolina. Magnolia Heights, an established residential neighborhood where tree-lined streets and historic homes create postcards of Southern elegance. Property values averaging $650,000. Demographics predominantly white. The kind of neighborhood where everyone supposedly knows everyone, except when they don't want to. It was 3:47 p.m. on a Saturday in June. Temperature 89 degrees, humidity thick enough to taste. The kind of afternoon where lawns demand attention and weekend projects can't wait for cooler weather. Judge Arthur Pemberton was in his front yard tending to his orchid collection. He was 56 years old, chief presiding judge for South Carolina's 9th Judicial Circuit, a position he'd held for 8 years after 23 years on the bench. His jurisdiction covered 6 counties. His rulings shaped legal precedent. His courtroom commanded respect from prosecutors and defense attorneys alike. But that Saturday afternoon, he wasn't Judge Vance. He was just Arthur, wearing cargo shorts, a faded college t-shirt, and gardening gloves, carefully transplanting rare orchids into ceramic pots, arranged along his front walkway. He'd been cultivating orchids for 15 years. Phalaenopsis, Cattleya, Dendrobium, species requiring specific care and considerable knowledge. His collection had been featured in Southern Living magazine 2 years earlier. Several specimens were valued at over $2,000 each. This wasn't casual gardening. This was serious horticulture. Officer Dylan Carpenter had been with the Charleston Police Department for 11 months. At 24 years old, he was fresh from academy, assigned to residential patrol, eager to make arrests that would build his record. His training evaluations had noted concerns. Demonstrates tendency toward aggressive engagement. Should develop better assessment skills before independent assignments. But staffing shortages meant rookies were patrolling solo within weeks. That afternoon, Cole received a dispatch call. Neighbor complaint from 2851 Magnolia Drive. Suspicious black male in yard at 2847 Magnolia. Doing something with plants that look strange, possibly drugs. The caller was Patricia Donovan, a 64-year-old white woman who lived on Magnolia Drive for 30 years. She'd watched Arthur move in 2 years ago and had never once introduced herself, never welcomed him to the neighborhood, never acknowledged his presence beyond suspicious stares when he checked his mail. Carpenter responded within 4 minutes. His body cam activated as he exited his patrol car and immediately focused on Arthur in the front yard. The footage shows Carpenter's approach, fast, aggressive, no observational pause to assess the situation. He saw a black man with plants and made immediate assumptions. The body cam jerked into frame tight and invasive. Arthur looked up from his orchids, his expression shifting from mild curiosity to controlled concern. "Sir, step away from the plants. I need to see your hands." Arthur stood slowly, removing his gardening gloves with deliberate care. His voice was measured, calm, carrying the authority of someone accustomed to controlling rooms. "Officer, can I help you with something?"
The body cam captured Carpenter's response. Sharp, accusatory, no professional courtesy. "We got a call about suspicious activity. Those plants, what are they?" Arthur glanced at his orchids, then back at Carpenter with an expression suggesting he couldn't quite believe the question. "They're orchids. Phalaenopsis and Cattleya hybrids. I'm transplanting them into larger containers." Carpenter stepped closer, his boots crossing from public sidewalk onto Arthur's property without invitation or legal justification. "They look like marijuana plants. I need to inspect them." Arthur's jaw tightened. The body cam shows his body language shift, still calm but coiled beneath. "Officer, these are legal ornamental orchids. You're currently on my private property without invitation or probable cause. I'm going to ask you to step back to the sidewalk." Carpenter's hand moved to his belt, hovering near his handcuffs. "Sir, I'm conducting an investigation. You need to cooperate." "Investigation of what?" Arthur's voice carried steel beneath velvet. "Growing flowers in my own yard?" The body cam captured Carpenter's face. Ego wounded, authority challenged, doubling down rather than reassessing. "Don't get an attitude. I can detain you for obstruction if you interfere with my investigation." Arthur pulled his phone from his pocket, moving slowly and deliberately. "Officer, I'm recording this encounter. You've entered my property without warrant or exigent circumstances. You've accused me of criminal activity based on ornamental plants, and you're now threatening detention for exercising my constitutional rights. I suggest you verify your probable cause before this escalates further." Carpenter's voice rose. "Put the phone down! Stop recording!" "I have every legal right to record police activity on my own property." Arthur Stone remained infuriatingly calm, the voice of someone who'd spent decades in courtrooms watching officers testify. "What's your name and badge number?" The question seemed to finally penetrate Carpenter's aggressive certainty. For the first time, doubt flickered across his face. But instead of retreating, he'd pushed forward, ego overriding judgment. "I'm Officer Carpenter, badge 4821, and you need to identify yourself right now." Arthur reached into his pocket and pulled out his driver's license and another card, judicial identification with the South Carolina state seal. He held both at eye level, 2 feet from Carpenter's body cam. "I am Chief Presiding Judge Arthur Pemberton, 9th Judicial Circuit. This is my residence. Those are my orchids. You are currently trespassing on the property of a state judicial officer without legal justification. I'm ordering you to leave immediately." The body cam captured Carpenter's face perfectly. His eyes widened, his mouth opened slightly. For 3 full seconds, he stood frozen, processing the catastrophic error he'd just made. But ego, wounded, defensive, desperate, wouldn't let him retreat. His voice came out strained, defensive. "I just, investigating a complaint. I have to check." "You have no probable cause." Arthur's voice carried courtroom authority now, no longer the patient homeowner, but the judge who commanded respect from everyone in his jurisdiction. "You have violated my Fourth Amendment rights. You've trespassed on judicial property. You've made baseless accusations about legal plants. And you're now threatening detention for exercising my constitutional rights. I suggest you verify your probable cause before this escalates further." Have you ever seen someone stay calm under pressure like this? Tell me in the comments. What happened next was a textbook case of an officer's ego transforming a bad decision into career-ending misconduct. Carpenter could have apologized, retreated, and escaped with only embarrassment. Instead, he escalated. "I still need to verify these plants aren't illegal." Arthur's patience was eroding. "Officer Carpenter, I've identified myself as Chief Presiding Judge. My credentials are valid. My property is private. You have no warrant, no exigent circumstances, and no legal authority to conduct any search. Leave now." But Carpenter couldn't accept defeat. He'd been challenged, contradicted, and proven wrong, all on Bodycam. Retreating meant admitting error. So instead, he attempted to assert control through the only means he understood: detention. "Sir, you're being uncooperative. I'm going to need you to step back while I complete my investigation." He took a step toward Arthur's orchids. Arthur moved to block his path, not aggressively, just positioning his body between Carpenter and his property. "Don't touch my plants. Don't move further onto my property. You are trespassing." Carpenter's hand shot out and grabbed Arthur's arm. The Bodycam captured the moment clearly. Arthur standing still, Carpenter initiating physical contact, aggressive grip on a state judicial officer's forearm. Arthur's voice dropped to absolute zero. "Remove your hand immediately. You are now committing assault on a judicial officer." "You're obstructing my investigation. I'm placing you in detention." The Bodycam shows Arthur's face. Not fear, not panic, but cold calculation. He didn't pull away violently, didn't escalate physically, just spoke with devastating clarity. "Officer Carpenter, you are creating evidence for multiple criminal charges and civil rights violations. Every second you maintain physical contact compounds your liability. Your Bodycam is recording your assault on a chief presiding judge. I'm advising you for the final time. Release me and leave my property." Carpenter's radio crackled. His dispatcher's voice cut through. 4821, be advised backup is en route to your location per supervisor request. Confirm situation status. Carpenter's face showed the first real crack in his certainty. "Backup? I didn't request." A second patrol car pulled up within 30 seconds. Sergeant Vincent Bradley stepped out, a 19-year veteran who'd been monitoring the radio traffic and recognized the address. He took one look at the scene. Carpenter gripping Arthur's arm, Arthur standing rigid with obvious authority, orchids scattered around them, and his face went pale. "Carpenter, release him immediately." "Sarge, this subject was uncooperative, wouldn't let me inspect." Bradley cut him off, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "That's Judge Pemberton, Chief Presiding Judge. You're assaulting a state judicial officer. Release him now." Carpenter's hand dropped from Arthur's arm like he'd been burned. His face cycled through confusion, fear, and dawning horror. Bradley approached Arthur with professional deference.
"Judge Pemberton, I apologize for this encounter. Officer Carpenter was responding to a complaint and clearly failed to properly assess the situation. You're obviously free to go. This detention is terminated." Arthur rubbed his arm where Carpenter had grabbed him, his voice carrying judicial precision. "Sergeant Bradley, Officer Carpenter entered my property without invitation, accused me of criminal activity based on legal orchids, ignored my identification as a judicial officer, refused lawful orders to leave private property, physically detained me without cause, and committed assault when I attempted to protect my property from illegal search. I will be filing formal complaints through appropriate channels, and I'm documenting this entire encounter for legal proceedings." Bradley nodded slowly, his expression grim. "Understood, sir. We'll preserve all Bodycam footage and file incident reports. Is there anything you need from us at this moment? I need both of you off my property. Immediately." If you were in Judge Vance's shoes, what would you have done? Within 2 hours of Sergeant Bradley leaving Judge Pemberton's property, the incident report reached the desk of Internal Affairs Captain Diane Lawson. She read it once,
went pale, read it again, and immediately called the chief of police. By Monday morning, Officer Carpenter's personnel file was spread across multiple desks: Internal Affairs, City Attorney's Office, Police Chief's Office, and Risk Management. What they found was a pattern that should have prevented Carpenter from ever receiving badge authority. The 911 call that had triggered Carpenter's response was recording, as all emergency calls are. The audio was chilling in its casual racism. Dispatcher: 911, what's your emergency? Patricia Donovan: There's a suspicious black man in the yard next door doing something with plants that look like drugs. Dispatcher: Ma'am, can you describe what makes the activity suspicious? Patricia Donovan: Well, he's black and this is a nice neighborhood. He's always doing things in his yard and I don't think he belongs here. Dispatcher: Has he threatened anyone or committed any observable crime? Patricia Donovan: He doesn't need to commit a crime for you to check it out. That's what police are for, keeping neighborhoods safe. The dispatcher, following protocol, created a call log describing suspicious activity with possible drug-related plants. But the underlying complaint was pure racial profiling. A black man existing in a nice neighborhood where a white woman didn't think he belonged. Officer Carpenter's training records revealed he'd received failing scores in de-escalation scenarios. Academy instructors had noted, Cadet Carpenter demonstrates poor judgment in ambiguous situations, tends toward aggressive response rather than assessment. Recommend additional training before field assignment. That recommendation was noted and ignored. His field training officer evaluations included warnings. Officer Carpenter needs significant improvement in recognizing when force or detention is appropriate versus when conversation and verification are sufficient. He operates on assumptions rather than evidence. 3 formal complaints had been filed against Carpenter during his 11 months of service. Complaint number 1. Black teenager stopped for suspicious behavior while waiting at a bus stop. Teenager was heading home from school. Carpenter demanded ID, conducted pat-down search, found nothing. Complaint dismissed with notation, officer exercising reasonable caution. Complaint number 2. Hispanic man stopped while jogging through neighborhood. Carpenter claimed man matched description of suspect. No suspect existed. Complaint dismissed with notation, mistaken identity, no malicious intent. Complaint number 3. Black woman walking her dog questioned about what she was doing in the neighborhood. Woman lived 3 houses down from where Carpenter stopped her. Complaint dismissed with notation, officer maintaining community awareness. 3 complaints in 11 months, all involving people of color, all involving baseless suspicion, all dismissed without meaningful discipline or retraining. And now, Carpenter had assaulted a chief presiding judge in his own yard. Judge Pemberton filed formal complaints through 3 separate channels: Charleston Police Internal Affairs, South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, and the State Judicial Standards Commission, which had authority to investigate interference with judicial officers. His written complaint was devastating in its precision. On June 15th at approximately 3:47 p.m., Officer Dylan Carpenter entered my private property without warrant or invitation, accused me of criminal activity based on legal ornamental plants, refused to accept my identification as chief presiding judge, physically detained me without probable cause, and committed assault when I attempted to protect my property from illegal search. This represents not only individual misconduct, but patterned behavior, as evidenced by Officer Carpenter's complaint history. I am filing this complaint both as a private citizen whose rights were violated and as a judicial officer concerned about systemic failures in training and accountability. Internal Affairs launched immediate investigation. Every Bodycam frame was analyzed. Dispatch recordings were reviewed. Carpenter's complaint history was compiled. And the conclusion was undeniable. Carpenter had committed multiple violations of policy, law, and constitutional rights.
Do you think the officer knew who he was messing with? Let me know below. Tuesday morning, Police Chief Gerald Whitfield held an emergency meeting with his command staff, city attorneys, and risk management. The agenda had one item: the Judge Pemberton incident and its catastrophic implications. The city attorney's assessment was blunt. We have no defense. Officer Carpenter violated clearly established Fourth Amendment rights by entering private property without cause. He detained a judicial officer without justification. He ignored explicit orders to leave, and he committed assault and battery, all captured on Bodycam. If this goes to trial, we're looking at a jury verdict that could exceed $20 million. Judge Pemberton, exercising his authority as chief presiding judge, convened a special investigative panel examining the incident as potential interference with judicial function, a serious matter under South Carolina law. His position gave him direct access to investigative resources and legal mechanisms unavailable to ordinary citizens. The panel's findings, released within 10 days, were damning. Officer Carpenter initiated contact based on racially motivated 911 call containing no articulable criminal activity. Carpenter entered private property without legal justification. Carpenter refused to accept valid judicial identification. Carpenter conducted investigative detention without probable cause. Carpenter committed assault and battery on a state judicial officer. Carpenter's pattern of complaints indicated systemic bias unaddressed by his department. But the investigation revealed something more disturbing. Internal emails between Carpenter and other rookie officers showed a culture of aggressive enforcement encouraged by certain supervisors. One email from Carpenter to a fellow officer read, "Another welfare check on someone who doesn't belong in a rich neighborhood. Easiest overtime ever." The cavalier attitude toward pretextual stops, the casual racism embedded in the phrase "doesn't belong," and the implication that such stops were common enough to be routine, all pointed to problems far beyond one officer. Judge Pemberton gave a deposition that became required viewing in police academies nationwide. His testimony was measured, precise, and devastating. Officer Carpenter didn't see a homeowner tending his garden. He saw a black man in an affluent white neighborhood and assumed criminality. When I identified myself as chief presiding judge, he didn't apologize or retreat. He escalated. Why? Because in his worldview, a black man claiming authority couldn't possibly be telling the truth. That assumption, that implicit bias, is what transformed a bad stop into criminal assault. How do you feel seeing the truth finally come out? Comment your thoughts.
The termination hearing for Officer Dylan Carpenter was held 3 weeks after the incident. Unlike typical disciplinary proceedings held internally, Carpenter's assault on a judicial officer meant the hearing was conducted before a special panel, including representatives from the State Law Enforcement Division. The evidence presented was overwhelming. Bodycam footage playing on a large screen, showing every moment from aggressive approach to physical assault. Dispatch recordings proving the complaint was racial profiling. Carpenter's complaint history demonstrating pattern behavior. Expert testimony from constitutional law scholars explaining the multiple rights violations. Carpenter's attorney attempted to argue that he'd been following protocol for investigating suspicious activity. The argument collapsed immediately. Panel members asked, what was suspicious about ornamental orchids in daylight in a homeowner's front yard? Carpenter's attorney had no answer. The panel's decision was unanimous: termination for cause. Officer Dylan Carpenter was fired from the Charleston Police Department effective immediately. His law enforcement certification was permanently revoked by the state. His name was entered into national decertification databases, preventing employment in any law enforcement capacity anywhere in the United States. The termination letter was specific and damning. Officer Carpenter demonstrated pattern bias, violated constitutional rights, ignored judicial authority, committed assault on a state official, and showed no understanding of appropriate use of police power. He is unfit for law enforcement service. Carpenter was 24 years old. His career lasted 11 months. His pension was forfeit, and he faced potential criminal charges for assault on a judicial officer. But individual accountability was only beginning. Judge Pemberton filed a federal civil rights lawsuit in the District of South Carolina. The complaint named Officer Dylan Carpenter,
Sergeant Vincent Bradley for supervisory failure, Police Chief Gerald Whitfield for inadequate training, and the City of Charleston for municipal liability under Monell. The claims included violation of Fourth Amendment rights, unlawful entry and seizure, assault and battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligent training and supervision, and violation of state law protecting judicial officers from interference. Damages sought $15 million. The city's legal team evaluated the case and reached grim conclusion. They had no defense. The body cam proved everything. The pattern evidence showed systemic failure, and a jury would see a respected judge assaulted in his own yard by a rookie cop who couldn't recognize orchids from marijuana. Settlement negotiations began immediately. The city's initial offer, $3 million plus policy reforms, was rejected. Judge Pemberton's attorneys demanded full accountability, $15 million, comprehensive reforms, public acknowledgement of wrongdoing, and federal monitoring of police training.